Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to E3 2013. I'm your host, Chris Waters, here on Stage 1 for Day 2 of GameSpot's live demos. We got demos all day from 10, which is now, depending on what, if you're in this time zone, all the way to 6. 8 hours stacked up of the biggest games here at E3, and we're starting it off with a healthy dose of whimsy and delight. It's Hohokum, and joining me on stage, Richard Hogg and Ricky from Honey Slug, here to show off the game. Guys, welcome to the stage.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, so Hohokum, it's not a game that you can discern a whole lot of information about right from the name. So what's the deal? What's Hohokum about?
What is Hohokum about?
It's about flying around and having fun.
Flying around and having fun. Those are things that I think we can all get behind. Now, Richard, you're the artist collaborating with Honey Slug on this game.
Yeah, that's right, I guess. So I'm kind of from a kind of graphic art illustration background, rather than video games. And then this is the second game that I've made with Honey Slug. We made a game called Frobisher Says for the Vita last year.
For the Vita.
Which had other artists working on it as well. But in Hohokum, I do all the art. I'm the art guy. But then the sort of design, gameplay is a sort of collaboration between us.
Yeah. All right. And so we're going to take a look at some of Hohokum in action. I think we see it perhaps burgeoning on the screen right over there now. Just want to remind you folks real quick before we get underway that I'll be taking your questions live all day off Twitter. Use hashtag GameSpotE3. If you're watching on GameSpot, get in the comments. And if you're watching on twitch.tv/GameSpot, get in the chat and let me know what you want to know. I'll totally ask these guys. So here we see Hohokum in action. Flying about. You're sort of just like tracing colorful lines through burger paradise is what I'm identifying that as.
Those things are called pop nuts.
Pop nuts?
Yeah, those orange things that were just there. And then this is what you're seeing there, where he's like carrying people as, I guess, a kind of core gameplay thing.
Transporting folks around.
Fish following you around. These guys are carrying these kite seeds here. Look a bit like big pine cones or something. So you're this kind of exuberant, quite creative, sort of expressive thing, and that's at the heart of what our game's about, really.
I love it.
Just being that thing and flying around is kind of like flying a kite or something. It's a relaxing and delightful thing, just being that thing. And then we're all about just trying to create worlds that you'd want to explore and kind of just immerse yourself in while being that creature.
Sure. I mean, already we're getting a taste of the kind of variety of world and space. We saw a little carnival with a Ferris wheel, and now, visiting an artist on his lone planet studio, or maybe a scientist. I don't know.
He's like a sort of butterfly collector, but all the butterflies are just spots, coloured spots. Because he lives in this area that's like the Fun Spot Desert. And it's pretty kind of abstract, there's coloured spots, but every now and then you come across these guys who kind of harvest the spots and do stuff with them. And that guy's made a collection of all the smallest ones. And he's like looking at them in his magnifying glass. Yeah.
So this, from your perspective, Richard, creating the art and creating these worlds to be places that you really want to discover, and places that are just a joy to swim about.
And the audio and the music is a massive part of it as well.
The whole visual package, the whole artistic presentation. But in terms of translating that to gameplay, Ricky, what do you do to help the sensation of play match the delight of discovery and the visual aesthetic?
Yeah, so I guess we're just trying to come up with simple elements that really feel tactile. Already just by moving around in an empty space, you're quite an expressive thing. But then you want to kind of use collisions and applying forces to the player, pushing them in a direction, just to kind of heighten that sense of you're kind of on a roller coaster at times, and just trying to make the world feel very reactive to your movements as much as possible. And also, I guess, doing that in a way that's kind of simultaneously surprising, but also where people can kind of have a thread of gradually figuring things out. So you kind of want, we definitely never want to tell the player what to do. We never want to say, this is what you do in this game, but we want people to gradually explore and find out what the interactions are, and then sort of figure out what each place is about by themselves, by sort of chaining together these sort of simple gameplay elements.
Cool. And, we've got a glimpse of, of course, the core bit is steering the little thing around. Does it have a name?
That's a good question. So we internally call him the long mover.
The long mover.
Yeah, and I guess we like that as a name, but I don't think we want to kind of burden the player with him having a name explicitly.
It's just sort of a conduit for you to exist in this world.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're a kind of quite a strange alien thing. He doesn't talk. He's very different to all the other people in the world.
There's an old American TV series called The Littlest Hobo, which is about a little dog who shows up.
I'm not familiar with.
I think we got that I think it was bigger in the UK than it was in the States. I think even though it was an American show.
Is it about a child hobo?
Basically,
it's a dog. It's German Shepherd.
It's basically the A-Team, but instead of the A-Team, it's a little dog.
No, quite a big dog.
Oh, yeah. He shows up and just solves mysteries and fixes things for people, but he's not from any place. And then at the end of every episode, he moves on to the next small
The
town.
key thing is, each episode, they don't know what his name is because he just rolls up into their town or their farm or whatever, and they often give him a different name. So each week, the actors in the thing talking to him with a different name, and no one knows what his actual name is.
That poor actor dog.
And so maybe our character's a bit like that, really, I guess.
That's interesting, yeah, because we, during that, the sort of what we were watching of the game, you saw, bringing light to dark areas. We saw transporting some characters sort of on the line of the long mover, and here we see, bringing those color spots into the world, just conjuring them out of the ether almost.
It's a game that are very abstract and are very much just about kind of making patterns and shapes and immersing yourself in the music and the kind of a very sort of simple kind of interaction. But then there are other bits of the game which have more puzzle solving, I guess. Things where you have to figure out something quite complicated to make something happen. But it's a really important thing for us that the game's never very stressful.
Yeah.
There's never really failure. There are puzzles, but a lot of times solving puzzles in the game is more like just being pleasantly surprised by something. Oh yeah, if I do this and then I do that, then this guy appears and then I can take him there, and then this happens.
Okay.
But not in a way where it tells you when you failed and you have to go all the way back and yeah.
Sure. Yeah, just a way that gives you more things to explore, more things to discover within the world. Very cool. So a game like this, it's a game that's, like you said, it's not within sort of traditional conquer this level, achieve these specific objectives. What's fun for you guys about making games like that are just experiences that you sort of chart your own course almost?
I guess there's two things. One is that almost anything goes. Like it really is when we come to make a new place of the game. Because we're not kind of married to any specific mechanics, lots and lots of things are available to us in terms of possibilities. Like we can pretty much have anything happen in this game. And then when you watch people play the game, you have to try and get inside their heads and figure out what sense they're making of it. And it's a hard thing to do to make sure that people, you're not just explicitly revealing it and giving everything away, but at the same time people aren't completely baffled by it. You kind of want them to be in that nice sort of zone of wonder where they're
intrigued.
Yeah.
Kind of sweet spot where there's things that they're discovering, but they're not banging their head against a brick wall going what do I do here? Yeah.
We've got actually some questions coming in from the chat wondering about if there's any way to, in terms of questions about the soundtrack. You mentioned that earlier, and we're seeing a lot of the art style on display here and sort of an underlying soundtrack, but how does that evolve and change? How does that play a role in creating this world?
First we should explain about the...
Yeah, so the music's a really exciting part of what we're doing. So we're collaborating with the record label Ghostly. So all of the music is music by artists on that label, and a lot of it is original music that's been made for the game where those musicians have played the game and are responding directly, to what we're doing.
Inspired by what they experience.
So it's it's a real collaboration. Years ago, when we were first working on our first prototype, we kind of had a playlist of music which was the sort of stuff we wanted in the game, and quite a lot of it was from the Ghostly record label, and we never dreamt we'd end up actually working with them so closely on the game.
And then lo and behold, it worked out.
It's amazing, and we can't wait for people to hear more of it.
And then on the kind of interactive side, we take the music tracks we get, and they're split into a whole bunch of different layers. So it could be like drums, separate from the bass, separate from the strings, and then we do a whole bunch of interactive things to allow some layers to come in and out
Okay.
It could be as simple as just like there's a water world, and when you go out of the water, a bunch of the layers drop away, which just leaves you with the sort of bed of the track. And then when you plunge back into the water, all this music comes in around you.
Interesting.
That's kind of the simplest implementation.
And it's kind of an inversion of what a human experience is going into water. You know, it's muting when you submerge yourself.
But which was deliberate and kind of a bit. It's kind of weird. Yeah, we're always looking for like whimsical things like that are kind of a twist on how it is in the real world, but kind of familiar at the same time.
Yeah.
And then other places in the game will be, I guess, much more like you are playing a musical instrument. So those fields of just coloured spots, the idea is that they will feel very much like you're sort of playing a big, strange musical instrument.
A big, strange musical instrument.
Yeah.
All right, speaking of strange, where'd the name Hohokum come from?
There's a place called Hohokum, with an A rather than a U. It's an ancient civilization based in Arizona.
Okay.
They were around like 3,000 years ago, I think. Yeah, like
it collapsed, and there's a whole ton of archaeology going on there.
Yeah, and that has nothing to do with our game. No,
Just kind of like
we used to have this idea. We used to have this weird idea with naming our games to call our game something very close to something that's already out there that's really interesting, but maybe people don't know about. So that when people when we were first in the IGF, if people Googled Hohokum, Google would go, "Don't you mean Hohokam?" And then they'd go off.
Aren't you researching an ancient civilization right now?
Which is probably like really bad marketing, because it means that people are not finding out about our game. They're going off and spending like their lunch break reading about an ancient civilization in Arizona.
And all of a sudden, you're educational outreach instead of game creators.
But it doesn't work anymore, because now when you Google Hohokum, it literally knows. You know, Google's really clever like that. Yeah.
You guys have made it.
Yeah.
You're Googleable.
Yeah.
Now, the previous game you worked on with these guys was Frobisher Says, so what, as an artist, was that your first experience?
No, well, we made a little game called Poto and Kabenga before that, which was that's the very first video game thing that I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
But certainly, it seems working in video games is something you enjoy greatly.
I love it.
What as an artist, who sort of has explored in other mediums, what attracts you to video games?
I'd say there's like two distinct things. One is actually they're really cool things to make. It's really fun to not, rather than just be drawing stuff, be drawing like characters and saying, well, what does this character do? Where does he go? And creating worlds, rather than just a flat image, or even making a film like an animation. It's not as tactile. It's not it doesn't have the scope of a game. So there's that. That's one aspect. The second aspect is everyone in the world of video games is lovely. And since doing more of this kind of work, it's a revelation to me. Because before I was just a guy, and I'd be rung by a guy, we need this illustration for a magazine article, we need it tomorrow, and then draw, then there you go. And that was and then some of those are nice people as well. But the world of video games, particularly the indie kind of scene, it's such a vibrant community of so many amazing people, and you go to, every time I come to a thing like this, I don't think I've ever, I've probably hugged more indie developers than I ever hugged my own mother when I was a kid, and it's awesome.
That sounds like a pretty good gig.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a pleasure to start the show off with Hohokum, and with such a delightful, joyful experience, and one that, the creative process is also a delight for you guys. Clearly, you enjoy working on it. When can folks play Hohokum, and on what platform are they going to be able to?
So it's coming out on PS4, PlayStation Vita, and PS3, and it's coming out in 2014.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show.
Thanks,
you.
Chris.
Pleasure to have you. Folks, our show is underway now, and we're going to head over to the Microsoft booth to take a look at Splinter Cell before coming back to the main stage for infamous Second Son.